All right, listening audience, my second guest on the Reading Circle doubleheader is, as you've heard, already on the line with us, and she is Alexis Nicole White. Was born in Gary, Indiana, where she lived with her grandparents. Raised an only child, Alexis developed a passion for the arts, reading, writing, and acting. As early as middle school, she began to expand upon her creative talents by writing books. Oh, that's one of my questions, and we're going to talk about that. Plays, and even publishing poetry. In college, her talents grew into professional journalism with blogging, radio, all right now, and television. After moving to Atlanta to pursue her career in journalism, Alexis's passion for writing became stagnant after not being able to secure a full-time paying position. Still, she has used her voice to empower the disenfranchised and promote awareness to various social problems. Currently, Alexis is raising awareness to emotional abuse. I know that's right, disguised in forms of deceit, mischief, and betrayal in her memoir, The Covered. Today, Alexis is a multifaceted powerhouse. As an entrepreneur, inspirational speaker, radio, and reality television personality, Alexis is dominating every avenue of entertainment. Again, Alexis, formally, welcome to the Reading Circle with Marc Medley.
Thank you so much.
Well, you know what, again, I'm glad you joined me this morning. I'm looking at your name. We were just talking about names with Shina, and I'm big into names. It's like whenever my wife was expecting our daughters the entire 9 months, I was in the name book. And I for me, it was important to have names that had a meaning and flowed. And your name flows. I'm saying all that to say Alexis Nicole White. It flows. It's not like it was a bunch of names slammed together. Because see, there's some names that's just like, and I know some people do naming after ancestors or relatives. So it's kind of like whatever name they were, they just slam them all together. But then there are some names that just kind of flow like yours does. Alexis Nicole White. Wow. I mean, it works. And so now you've been doing the writing and all that since you were a child, because that's usually one of my questions, and the answers that I get varies. For some people, they don't pick the writing up until later in life, and for others, they always had a penchant or a passion for it when they were little, and I'm seeing you're falling in that latter category. So what kind of like spurred that, or what ignited reading and writing and all that as a child? Because I work with children today, and generally it's like a struggle to get a kid to read and write. What for you did it?
Well, first, I was very mischievous as a child, so I stayed into a lot of trouble. And so what usually ended up happening was that I was on punishment for long periods of time. And I couldn't do anything because it's not like 2016 where you have the internet, you have cable, all of those things were a little bit scarce still in the early 90s. Or early to late 90s. So I ended up reading a lot of books, and at the same time, it all worked together for my good because my middle school teacher in Detroit was very big on creative arts. And so a lot of our assignments would stretch our creative abilities to think and to write creatively. And so I learned how to write different types of things, and she would look at it and say, you're really ahead of your time. And between the books at home and the education during the day, I had no choice but to start using my creative juices and think differently about how to put things together. And I was one of the first people in our neighborhood with a computer back in the day.
Okay.
So I would just sit there. That's all I had. We had the internet, but it was dial-up. It wasn't that good back then.
Right.
So it was like if I was on the computer, I had to do something educational. So I created my own stories, and I wrote them. I wrote them in journals. I mean, anyone who knows me from that time would say I'm telling the truth because I used to carry notebooks around the school full of stories and ideas. Right, whatever it was that I wanted to think about. When I tuned out science, I started writing.
And that's interesting because, first off, there's a couple of things you said, and I listened. I was telling Shina earlier before we got on the air, I don't have a question sheet. My questions are always derived based on the conversation. So I heard you say that you had the reading and writing as punishment. And I'm happy it worked out for you in the way that it did. But I always caution teachers from doing that. And I know that's what they did because when I was a kid, they did the same thing. Because you don't want the child to associate something that should be enjoyable and pleasurable with punishment. That didn't happen in your case, and I'm glad to hear that. It actually, like you said, it worked for your good. But just the fact that you had to do it now, and you actually now derived enjoyment from doing it. which is a good thing. And it stayed with you. It's not something that, all right, you know what, now I'm older, I'm not doing this anymore. This is something that stayed with you as you went along.
Mm-hmm. Because I enjoyed it and I found my voice. And I've always been very imaginative of things, so it was my escape. Even though I can go out on the porch, but I couldn't leave the porch. It wasn't only so much in downtown Detroit that I could do at that time, because downtown Detroit was not as advanced as it is today.
Right.
So it was a lot of empty land, there was a mental health house down the street from me.
Okay.
So, it was like, it wasn't a lot of things for me to do as a teenager. And that's why we always got in trouble. So, like, we did crazy things. Like, I was reminding my mom the other day, I said, when I was 14, we stole a car. She's like, you stole a car? I said, Mom, you don't remember that's how I got on punishment? And the thing was that we didn't steal the car. My friend's grandmother left the keys to the car, and she had a permit. So we went joyriding in the car. So she was like, well, that's not stealing a car. I said, if I did it today, what would they call it?
Right.
Stealing the car, So we did things like that, And so my mom being in education, she had a lot of books. And I read a lot of Terry McMillan books. I read a lot of astrology books. And, the Terry McMillan stood out to me. The stories stood out to me.
Right.
And I was sitting there reading, and I'm like, I can do this. And again, my teacher, Miss Callahan, I've been looking for her for quite some time, but Miss Callahan, she taught me how to write a haiku. She taught me how to write creatively and to create stories that people will resonate with. And whenever I turned my work in, she would just tell my mother how proud she was of my work. And she just stressed to me, don't you stop writing. And ironically, the same thing happened in high school. I moved to Indiana. I went to a college prep high school, and they made us really learn how to write, like for real. And I had a creative writing class, and we had to do the same thing, write books and things like that. So I had no choice but to learn how to write creatively.
Well, you know what? Big shout outs to Miss Callahan. I'm always happy to hear people give kudos and compliments to their teachers, because like your mom is in education, I'm in education as well. And the truth be told, there is no other profession possible if it weren't for teachers. So when I hear somebody say, Miss Callahan, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be the writer that I am today, so forth and so on. Big shout outs to Miss Callahan. And I notice you're doing, and Terry McMillan, you're right. Matter of fact, I'd like to see if I can at some point get Terry on the show. She's one of those I've been going after a long time. Her, Eric Jerome Dickey, and a few other people I've been going after for a while. But you're so right. And it's funny how you said, wait a minute, if Terry can do this, I can do this too. That's what I need folks in the listening audience to pick up. If Shina can do that, I can do that too. If Alexis can do that, I can do that too. If you don't take anything away from it, if you have a book inside of you, or if you feel like you have a book inside of you, listen to these folks that come on the show on Saturday morning. Listen to Alexis this morning. Listen to Shina this morning. Take on that same mentality that if they can do it, if she can do it, you know what? I'm going to sit down here and do it myself. I'm going to share some information with the listening audience. Listening audience, you know what to do. Get on all your social media sites. I'm going to do it while we're on there as well. Let somebody know that Alexis Nicole White is on the air with me. And I mean all of them. Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Instagram, Periscope. Is that the new one now? Whatever. Yes. You get on. Because each day another one is coming out. So whatever social media network that you're on, text somebody on your phone. Let somebody know that Alexis Nicole White is on the air, and we're talking about her book, The Covered.
Hey, Woolly Feet students! Need help with a paper? Stuck on a difficult writing assignment? Have no fear, the WPU Writing Center is here. The Writing Center can help you form a thesis, edit a paper, or just organize ideas. Feel free to stop by either of our locations. We're at Atrium 128 and Valley Road 3048. For more information, please check out our website at wpunj.edu/Writing Center. Remember, walk-ins are welcome. We look forward to seeing you at the Writing Center.
I started going cold turkey. Well, at least when I'm in the car.
I know I shouldn't do it, but it's so hard to stop. That's why I hide it from myself, so I won't be tempted.
I used to do it all the time. I stopped by locking it in my glove compartment.
My friend used to do it way too much. Now I turn it off when we're in the car.
My solution is simple. I just don't do it
There are lots of ways to stop yourself and others from texting and driving. How will you stop? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
You're listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley on Brave New Radio.
All right, the music in the background is Go Up on the Third Limb. That is the title track from the CD, Go Up on the Third Limb. My guest this morning, and I took a couple of extra seconds because I was actually doing what I asked you to do, posting on my social media sites that Alexis is on the air with me right now. Tune in on GoBrave.org and FM radio WP 88.7 FM. I just posted that on all of my social media sites, and I need you to do the same. We are talking about we're working our way up to talking about her book, The Covered, but we're just letting you kind of get a walk or a feel for how she got there. And apparently, as we've been talking, she's been writing since she was a child. And so this is going to be like a natural transition into how she became an author, because she was already doing books and plays and publishing poetry and blogging and radio and television. So it was a natural move for her to move into actually putting it down on paper and in book format. I noticed you chose the topic of emotional abuse, and it's interesting that you actually specified the type of abuse. And the reason I'm saying that is because people hear the word abuse, not realizing that there are so many facets of abuse. What caused you to choose emotional abuse?
As a young woman in today's society, I've realized that when we speak to people, people are so full of judgment and condemnation, and they continue to humiliate and to shame people when they go through different things that they go through in life. And so in telling my story, just living my life before I even got to write the book, it's just interesting how you have discussions with people, just have conversation about people, and the assumptions people make about you when you say, this is what I've experienced, or I've seen this happen, or I know this happened. The way that they respond to you is very, very critically. And it is very, very disheartening for someone who was maybe just wanting to vent, or maybe just wanting to express themselves and have a conversation, not so much as an attack conversation, but just to have a conversation to understand how can they improve, if they want to improve, or what do you think I should do? And the attitude that comes behind it is very demeaning at times. And so I noticed that it wasn't just happening as we seem to think, that it happens from a parent to a child or from a woman to a man, but a lot of women do it to each other. And so I definitely wanted to highlight that when I shared my story with people, that this is something that we need to look at, especially as an African-American woman and an African-American community. We need to better address our relationships, because we maintain a lot of unhealthy relationships, and a lot of it is out of poor choice and decision-making. But a lot of times we don't realize how we even got to that place until it's too late. So, two things I want people to know. When someone finds themselves in these situations, it's not our job to be critical. Right. It's not our job to overanalyze the situation. That's the time for us to listen. And when we are asked for opinion, that's when we give it. But it's not to demean or devalue you. It's to edify you and to give you proper way and care, because a person is fragile. And when a person goes through a lot of different things,
that's right,
they're so depleted. So they're not looking for you to beat them up anymore, because they already feel bad. That's the time that we build them up, and we help them, and we empower them, and we enrich them, and we sow into their lives, and we let them know, you can do this. You can overcome this. Does not define you. You define it.
That's right.
But we do the opposite. So it's like the woman whose husband cheated on her. she feels like a failure. Now, sometimes she may recuperate and go on to the next marriage, or she may have issues from that point on where she doesn't get married again.
Right.
So we don't really help jumpstart people's healing like we should. And that's exactly why I wanted to target emotional abuse in telling my story, because I wanted people to see that I necessarily wasn't looking for anything to happen. Things just continued to happen to me. And I didn't want people to think that I was either looking for something or just was out here willy-nilly and came across something. But that's what people seem to think, you know?
Right. I say willy-nilly. It sounds like Cedric. That's what he said, willy-nilly. And you know what? You are so right in terms of, and I don't know if you caught the beginning of the show earlier this morning when Shina came on, because when I start the show, I always read from 2 books. Mm-hmm. And one of the books that I read from is written by Joyce Meyer. And it's called The Power of Being Thankful. And it's a devotional. And today, for February 6th, it was learning to cope with criticism. Mm-hmm. And I'll share it again just because of what you just said. It says, no matter what we do in life, at some point in time, we will all face a level of criticism. But it is possible to learn how to cope with criticism and not let it affect your life. Mm-hmm. We can be grateful for the example the Apostle Paul set for us. Paul experienced criticism often, but he said that he was not concerned about the judgment of others. He knew he was in God's hands and that in the end he would stand before God and give an account of himself and his life. He would not stand before any man to be judged. You may not always do everything right, but God sees your heart. If you're attempting to live for God and looking for ways to love others, God is pleased. Don't worry about the criticism of others. God loves you. His love and approval are all you need. And the prayer for that was, Father, I thank you that I don't have to listen to the criticism of others. You see my heart and you know my motives. I thank you that your approval is greater than the approval of any person. And that's what I read in the 6 o'clock hour. See, this is why I know there's a source higher than us, because things connect. I mean, the fact that you are on this show this morning talking about that, and the fact that in February 6th in that book, that was the reading for the day. That was by design providence, or divine providence, if you will. That wasn't like by happenstance. So you are so right. And the things you were talking about, like when you said something along the lines of, male, female, money, a lot of times it is female to female, and that's just straight up catty. Mm-hmm. That's why, I mean, I can always, and historically, I've always worked with a lot of females, just in my corporate career as well as in education, because there's always more female teachers than males. So historically, and I can always tell when the female thing, when the cat thing is going on. I can always tell it. Mm-hmm. And I say, okay, you know what? That's just straight up catty there. It is,
but the thing is, we as women don't even acknowledge that we're being petty.
Right.
And the thing that irritates me the most is that we pretend like we don't go through anything, and we pretend like we got it all together. And I'm combating and challenging women to stop pretending that we have it all together. You cannot have it all. I don't care what they say. Unless you have $1 million or more and you can afford hired help to help you have it all, you cannot have it all. It's impossible to be a great mother, a great wife, and a great employee or employer, entrepreneur, whatever your working status is. And even the women that stay at home say, I don't know how people do this, because you rarely have time for yourself. So my point in saying that is when someone comes to you and says, I'm having challenges where I feel like I'm not being a good mother, or I have these thoughts, don't attack her to say, oh, well, that's just a part of life. Those are whatever people say. That's your time to say, well, what exactly is making you feel this way? Have you thought about getting up maybe an extra hour earlier to work on what it is that you need to work on? Have you thought about taking time for you? That's when you start asking those questions to help someone redesign their life, because something is happening there that's making them feel like that. And we, a lot of times, as women, we go into this critical mode, and then it's like we just penalize and beat people so much for the things that they're already going through, because we feel like they should have it all together, and we don't have it all together. And we will never have it all together. And it's okay to say, I understand that I won't have it all together. But that's what makes us human, and that's what makes us real, and that's what makes us cling to people that have our best interests in mind because they understand that where you're weak, I am strong.
There's no question. And there's something about transparency. And you are so correct in terms of people, we ought to be able to be transparent with each other and not be judged. In other words, in many cases, in a lot of cases, people just want to be listened to. They just want to be heard. They just want to have that voice you were talking about. They don't want somebody to judge them. They don't want nobody. Even sometimes they do want somebody to give them advice on how to fix it. Sometimes they don't. But certainly, someone that's in that position, they already feel down to begin with. And now you're going to come out with a whole bunch of other downers. You're going to add now, they're already feeling bad. Now you're going to add to them feeling bad based on your response. And that's exactly, you're right. And that doesn't help anything. Really, we are here to build each other up. We're here to be lights for each other and not add more darkness.
Right.
So if folks are going through a situation, it does not help anyone. And, you know, I know exactly what because for some people, in order for them to feel good about themselves, they got to be putting somebody else down.
And that's because they feel bad already within.
Yes.
So that's where they draw their power from because negativity attracts more negativity.
Yes.
So if you're already bitter and broken and damaged on the inside, you edify yourself off of making someone else feel that way because you want to feel better than they do. And at the end of the day, you're not making yourself feel better. And a lot of us, I mean, the truth of it is every last one of us has issues. We all do.
No question.
And so the issue that you may have may not be the issue that I have, but that doesn't mean that I don't have issues. And we really need to stop pretending like we don't have issues, especially in the church, you know, and it's kind of interesting because people, I understand more as an adult, our people repel from the church. And ironically, the more people that I communicated with about things that I was going through with people in the church, and their response was the worst out of the people that I would communicate with. and it's just like, you know, I'm like, why do we do this? You know, why do we do this? You know, so a lot of times people who are going through things attend the church. That's why we're there, because we're looking for a supreme answer to everything. Okay, so everybody in the church has an issue. Okay, so why do we sit there and frown upon the person who openly comes and says, these are my issues, this is what I struggle with? Why do we sit there and say, and act holier than thou, like we don't have something that we're going through? I just don't understand that, and I'm definitely challenging us to stop thinking like that. At the end of the day, we're still people, we're still his people, and we're all a part of one body. So whether or not you agree with what I'm doing or what I've done or what I've been exposed to, I'm not asking for you to judge me. I'm asking for you to help me get through this so that we can be better as a whole. And that we can build our team to help other people who, when they experience this.
Absolutely right. And it's so funny. You literally took the words out of my mouth whenever you said it happens more in the church than anywhere else. And in terms of, and I understand it from one perspective, because people come into the church and they want to take on that approach of everything is great. You know, I don't do this, I don't do that, my life is wonderful, this, that, and the other. When in reality, behind the scenes, everything is falling apart. Where the transparency comes in is that's where you can get the help if you have folks who are not trying to judge you, because biblically it says come as you are. And we sing that and we say that, just as I am, without one plea, so forth and so on. And then when somebody comes in the church just as they are,
it's a problem.
Yeah. You know, if the wino comes in off the street or the prostitute comes in off the street, everybody gives them funny looks.
And that feeds into emotional abuse.
Yes.
You know, and then that's why people don't want to come around you. You know, that's when people really, truly decide that they don't want to be around you and they don't respond to you and you don't get the response that you're looking for because you've made them feel bad. And when I say emotional abuse, people are like, oh, okay. Emotional abuse is so deep. It constitutes your finances for when a lot of times we see it where people, specifically women, are working, stay-at-home moms and their spouse are working people, and the spouse controls the money. So, like we were talking about before, they go hand in hand, but the wife doesn't leave an abusive situation because she doesn't have the money to move and do what she needs to do. Emotional abuse constitutes humiliation.
Right.
How many times do we see people being humiliated on the internet because they're of size, or because they said something, or because they've done something? I mean, like, the internet has constituted internet bullying,
Absolutely.
which is shaming and humiliation.
Cyberbullying. Yep.
Exactly. And then you have condemnation. You know, again, someone tells you something, we're condemning them, we're stoning them, you know, for things that have happened to them. I mean, the list goes on. And I definitely wanted, again, to just bring attention to the fact that sometimes people are 100% truly innocent of things that they come into. So don't think that when something happens to someone, they asked for it or they knew about it, because sometimes that's not the case. Now, there are times when we do know, and we just make poor decisions. But at any rate of how we got there, the point is that when someone comes to you and expresses to you with transparency and with love that this is what they have gone through, this is what they want to come out of, they're tired of these situations, that is not the time for us, regardless to who we are, where we are, what our marital statuses are, whatever the situation is. That's not the time for us to beat up, to judge, and make them feel bad.
Absolutely. And, my pastor always shares this story in terms of, and this is not condoning, the wrong, if it is wrong or what have you, but you have situations, particularly, this is where we lose our young people. Us older ones get in there and pretend like we've never done anything wrong.
Or been through anything.
Right. And then we down and judge them and make them feel like I know we don't do it anymore, but I remember when I was a kid, they would actually, like the young ladies who became pregnant out of wedlock, or they were teenagers, they would try to get them to stand up in front of the church and apologize to the church. So when the new pastor came, he was young at the time. He was only about 26, 27 at the time, and the saints came to him about the young lady, and she said, well, I'll tell you what, if you get up and apologize for everything you've done wrong, then I'll make them get up and apologize for everything they've done wrong. We didn't hear no more from that after that. The second thing he would always say was, a young lady got pregnant or what have you, and he said, wait a minute. When I do the math in terms of what the date is on your marriage license and the date is on that kid's birth certificate, they don't sync up. The birth certificate date is before the marriage date. But you're sitting here acting as if, and now you're downing this kid. And I'm not saying that, we're not condoning, but what we are saying is exactly what you're saying. You're supposed to be lifting people up, not trying to tear them down. All right. And that happens a lot, and that's why I asked you early on. I noticed your focus was on that particular type of abuse, and it can sometimes be worse than the physical abuse.
It is worse because you carry those scars on. One thing about people is that hurt people hurt other people.
Yep.
When you know how to love and how to uplift and how to promote and how to advocate and how to champion for and all of those positive things, you have no problem with sowing that into someone else because you know what it's like to receive it. So with that being said, just like you don't know how to love, and all you know how to hurt is because people have hurt you.
Right.
You do the same thing to other people. So I definitely want people to understand that this is real. This is not a pseudo event that's out there in outer space that people talk about once a blue moon. This is real. The way that we are raising our children affects the types of adults they will become.
Correct.
And if you're having and maintaining a toxic household, you're raising a toxic child that grows up to be a toxic individual in the workplace, that creates a hostile work environment for someone else, and has an abusive marriage or relationships, whatever they go on to do in life, because they never learn properly how to love, how to respect, how to treat, and how to respond to people properly without there being ego, without there being nasty attitudes, without there being misbehavior or disrespectful behavior. I mean, so many things that I can say that starts at home. Everything starts at home.
Absolutely.
But there's so many things that I can see just from when I was growing up and the way that my parents raised me and how children are being raised today.
Right.
And it's like somebody missed the boat at home.
Yep.
But again, if your parent didn't raise you to believe that way, then what's the likelihood that you're going to raise your children to believe that way?
That's correct. And again, working in education, and I say it, and I don't care who's listening or who I have to say it to in terms of superintendents and assistant superintendents and supervisors and state folks, there's not a one of them that's not going to convince me in any form or fashion that everything that we go through is because of what did or did not happen in the home. And it all started. My mother embedded that in me as a child. It all starts in the home, and I could not agree with her more. And I tout and preach that same message. It starts in the home. Now, don't get me wrong. Those of us who are in education, we have to wear many hats because many things are not going on in the home. But the truth of the matter is, it starts in the home. And you are so right. And kids who are abused are abusive. You're absolutely right there. There's no doubt about it. And hurt people do hurt people. And we deal with that every day. And again, I share all the time. I work in an urban school. And I work in particular city that I'm in. We are in the urban of the urban. I mean, so I look at my kids every day and I don't know what they're going home to, some of them. But we've been doing everything we can to change the game there. But I had a child last week that the guidance counselor brought in my office, 11 years old, was talking about suicide. And once we started probing as to, well, what's driving this feeling, it was just what you just said. My mother yells at me and her boyfriend looks at me funny and yada, 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 yada. She wasn't touched. They had not touched her or anything, but it was the emotional piece.
Right. And those are things that will scar her for the rest of her life.
Right.
You know, and because this is the way, and sadly enough, women need to get a better grip of this, because the way that she feels now is going to determine how she views men, if she views them at all, for the rest of her life.
Correct.
You know, and it really bothers me because people just don't realize the implications of their behavior. And it really bothers me that we have so many adults that do not respect children.
Right.
You only have 18 years to be a child. You have all the rest of your life to be an adult. You have all the rest of your life to work and to pay bills.
That's correct.
You know, that's your time to allow a child to be a child and to let them enjoy their childhood, because they're only going to experience that once. And for the rest of their life, they're going to be this adult that you've raised. So that is the responsibility of us as parents to create functioning, lovable, intelligent champions to go out in this world, because we know what it's like to be an adult and we know how hard it is. And I'm not going to get into the socio-economic status of it and, you know, the demographics of challenges that we have, but we know in general how difficult it is to be a full functioning adult in this world.
You're absolutely right.
To do all of the right things. So as parents, it is our job to change the way that our children view life.
That's
and
right.
to let them know that they can go and do this. You know, my son is 15 months old, and I noticed that everybody says their kid is so smart, right? But my son is very, very, very intelligent. Like, he likes buttons. He's fascinated. Like, he loves, like, the remote control. So he's always figuring out how to make things work. You know, and if he sees that there's a button, he's like, okay, well, this button clearly goes to something else.
Right.
But for a long time, he will crawl and not walk. And people will say, oh, is he walking? And I said, no, he doesn't walk. You know, he'll stand up, he'll sit down. And they're like, oh, he doesn't walk. But guess what he did? When he was ready and he got his confidence up, he started walking and would climb up the stairs all within the same week. You know?
Absolutely.
So it wasn't that he didn't know how.
Right.
His confidence wasn't there. So we had to build him up and let him know that you can do it, you can make it.
That's
and
right.
So guess what happened? I picked him up one day and he comes walking to the door. And I said, come on, baby. And he's wobbly, but he's walking towards the door. You know? So, and then that night he wouldn't sit down.
That's right.
You know? So my point is that we have to do the same thing to our children, so that they can understand that they are empowered to be as successful as they want to be. They are prepared to be as lovable and to love others the way that they would like to be loved, to treat them with respect, to respond to people with respect. I mean, all of that is our job. And if we're not giving it to them with the little few short years that we have with them, they're never going to get it, or they're going to get it from the wrong source.
Well, I tell you what, you actually just gave me the topic for my next blog post when you said that commentary about we only get one shot at being a kid. Mm-hmm. We only, between like the 18 years or what have you. So later on today or either sometime tomorrow, I'm actually going to write a blog post about this whole notion of the one chance of being a child. And it popped into me when you just said that. And earlier this week, I posted on Twitter because I was sitting in a presentation and the presenter said, there are no drills for marriage and parenting.
It's not.
And I thought about that and I tweeted that. And I said, you know what? He's right. You know, there's no training manual. There's no practice. There are no drills for parenting and for marriage. And what you are raised in, I mean, there's a whole poem about children learn what they live. And it gets into, like, if a child is raised in love, it'll be loving. If a child is raised in hate, it'll be hateful. If a child is raised in criticism, he'll be critical. If a child, it goes all the way down the list. If you Google it, you've probably seen it. But,
and that's very, very true. Exactly what you're saying, because one thing I've learned about me is that I can be critical. And then I had to sit up here and really think, where am I getting that from? And I thought about it. My dad is an engineer. So his mind is critical. And so when I was a young girl and I was in high school, because my parents were never married, so I don't buy into that whole single parent dive that people say, because you can still be successful as a single parent. My mom was a teenage parent, and my mother had me at 19 years old. She still completed Purdue University, pledged in a sorority. She still obtained 5 additional degrees and is now a candidate for superintendency. So you can't tell me that just because you come from something that's not favorable, that you still don't have favor and the ability to do different things. But as I got older, I had to really, really, really understand, where am I getting it from? And it goes back to my dad. When I was learning algebra, I had challenges. I was not mathematically inclined like he is. And my father would rip up my paper and make me start over my homework over and over again. So then, like, if I didn't clean up, the house good enough, he would put your glasses on, whatever he would say. And, as an adult, now I think critically about a lot of things. And I have to refrain from doing that. So a lot of times when I feel like I'm saying something that may be too critical to people, I would say, don't take this the wrong way. I'm not saying that you're not doing that. This is just what came to mind when you presented the challenge that you presented, or the comment that you presented. And as an adult, I have to look at things now from both sides, especially as a parent. I look at the pros and the cons. And at first, I thought that was common knowledge. But as an adult, I realized everyone doesn't have that ability to think that way. So just because they don't think that way doesn't make them unintelligent. That doesn't mean that they're incapable. That just means that they don't think the way that you do. So therefore, you don't have to penalize them by talking down to them and ripping them to shreds because they didn't think about what you thought about.
That's right. If you've just joined us, my guest in this hour is Alexis Nicole White. And we're talking about her work, which ultimately led to the book, The Covered. I'm going to share some information with you, but let someone know that Alexis is on the line with me. You can tune in on gobrave.org and WP 88.7 FM radio here in the northern New Jersey area.
How can I make money in the music business? Why copyright?
Should I make a CD anymore?
Trying to break into the music and entertainment biz? Wondering how the business works? Wondering how guys like Elton John and MC Hammer go bankrupt?
Why am I not making any cash?
Tune in to WP Brave New Radio every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. Hang with the university's music business faculty hosts, me, Steve Marconi.
And me, Dave Phil. Plus, we'll have industry guests and students from the music management program.
How do I get gigs down at the shore?
Call in with your questions and hear the latest in industry happenings.
How do I get my music on iTunes?
How do I get on a tour? It's Music Biz 101 and more every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Only on WP Brave New Radio.
Your secretary's got our checks, right?
Mine's direct deposit, I think.
Yo, it's the Hip Hop Shop. Best believe that we're hot. Nikki V and Dylan B.
Dude, are you rapping to yourself again?
It's a promo for the Hip Hop Shop, dude.
That made Vanilla Ice sound dope.
Well, how about you think of something better?
How about we just promote the show, considering this is a promo?
I mean, I guess we could do that.
Tune into the Hip Hop Shop, Sunday nights 9 to 11 p.m. on Brave New Radio.
We've got interviews,
freestyles,
hip-hop talk,
the freshest hip-hop music.
From the 80s,
90s,
2000s,
and the 2010s.
And if you'd like to take on one of the kings, we've got rap battles all night.
The Hip Hop Shop, 9 to 11 p.m. Sundays with DJ Nick Visco and Dylan Burns. You're not going to want to miss this.
You're listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley on Brave New Radio.
Yes, indeed, you are. You're listening to the second hour in a doubleheader of The Reading Circle. In my first hour, I had Shina Key. And in the second hour, I have Alexis Nicole White. And Shina and Alexis are on book tour together. They are traveling together on book tour. So I thought it would be fun to have both of them on the same morning. And they both graciously agreed. We are talking about Alexis's book, The Covered. So Alexis, whenever you now, this is a fiction? Is it it's a memoir? Talk to me about what type of book this is.
It is nonfiction. It is a memoir detailing my life post-college as a millennial, trying to figure it out, expecting a lot of life that I didn't get. And I don't know where these ideas come from as to, how do you go forward as a college kid? And, a lot of times we see it in politics. The conversation now is that, parents, what does a parent do and when does it end? Because as an adult, I expected to graduate and get a good job and meet a good man and get married, and none of those things happened. And so it was actually quite the opposite. So it's about me, trying to find my way as a young woman, making sure that I'm doing what my parents taught me to be successful, to be intelligent, to be respectable, and to just enjoy my life as an adult. And it's about me learning several hard lessons through practical application about life.
Right.
And how do I still keep myself feeling good about who I am despite these things that I've experienced?
Now, I'm looking through your picture gallery, and you were just talking about finding a man and marrying. I'm sure, looking through your picture gallery, that in terms of, I'll turn it the other way, men finding you. And I'm sure you have the option or the choice of being discriminatory, because I'm sure being desired by a male is not an issue. But you can make choices as to standards. That's where I'm trying to go with this.
Yes.
Not just any old thing is going to do.
Right, and that's true. But, if you're really not really, like, when I finished school, I was 24, so I was just a little bit older. But I just didn't really have that concept that there were just bad guys out there. And that just really comes from the way that I was raised. My parents treated me, or told me rather, that make sure that you treat people the way that you would like to be treated.
Correct.
So I expect that would be the way that people would treat me, and that's not always the case. In fact, there are some people out there who just genuinely don't mean to do well by anyone.
That's absolutely right.
It's not you, And a lot of times I listen to things that women say as an older woman now, that, we seem to think that if we do X, Y, and Z, that the end result is going to be marriage.
Right.
And it's like, newsflash, girlfriend, you can do X, Y, and Z and start the alphabet all over again. That doesn't mean that relationship is going to end in marriage,
Right.
So I'm definitely combating a lot of notions that we seem to have about what's a good woman, what's a bad woman.
Right.
What's a good relationship? How do you go about identifying a quality relationship? Should you really have those standards? Is it a bad thing when you don't stick to your standards? What are some consequences of that? So I'm definitely challenging, just again, from practical application, just some things that I've learned in life for what works for me. Now, mind you, another reader may pick it up and just say, that doesn't work for me. I don't believe in that. And that's fine. You're entitled to that. But you can't say that what I'm saying is invalid either, because there are so many other women late in life, the light bulb comes on for them. And they're like, if I could do it all over again, this is what I would do.
Absolutely. And see, and don't get me wrong here when I say standards, because for those sisters and females who are listening out there, I am not talking about job status. I know we were teasing earlier in terms of no romance without finance, so forth and so on. But I've seen situations where the blue collar gentleman was way more compatible and had way more of the standard than the female was looking for, yet she went with somebody that she thought was a white collar, a lawyer, or this, that, and the other, and it was a disaster.
A disaster, exactly. Say that again. Come on, somebody.
I know that's right.
And that's what I tell the women in my book, because a lot of times we bypass good men because, they may have some children issues, they may have some some prior relationship issues. I mean, whatever. Like, again, we all have issues.
Right.
So no one is not flawed. I mean, at this age, I'm 31. I'll be 32. The likelihood that you're going to meet as a woman, a man that doesn't have children in his early to mid 30s, is kind of rare. So, you know, sometimes I sit and listen again to people in the church, and I'm not beating up on them, but they're like, I'm waiting on this, and I'm waiting on that. And then you look up and you're 50, and you're sitting here like, where did my time go? And, you know, and I just think that it's unrealistic. And I think that instead of putting so much pressure and emphasis on the status of a relationship, I think that we should really get in our heads the value of companionship. And it's not a bad idea to have someone that you can enjoy your life with, because believe it or not, Mark, there are people out there that have dated a person for 20 years and they're happy.
Right.
And they give each other, and now we can, that's up for a whole different discussion. Why don't you get married? But the point is that you can have someone that loves you for you, who adores you, respects you, and don't mind going to the moon and back for you, and they're not necessarily your husband.
Right. I have seen a situation like you just described, and this is not made up. This is not fairy tale. I witnessed it. A couple lived together for, like you say, 20 years. They decided to get married. And the ironic and crazy thing about it was, within the year, they got divorced. Mm-hmm. But when they were not married, they were together 20 years. Everything was fine. When they got that piece of paper, now everything went crazy, and they ultimately split now. It's like, well, you all would have been better off not to have gotten married if it kept you together. Mm-hmm. But it has happened. And so it's titled The Covered. Where did you get the title from?
Because, for one, as a woman, we're not allowed and we're ashamed to be transparent when we go through different issues in our life, and we cover ourselves up. Especially, again, as a woman in a church. You know, we're not allowed to say things that we're going through. We're not allowed to be candid. We're not allowed to do a lot of things, you know, and we cover our voice. Another reason why I named it The Covered, because throughout my story and throughout my life, I named countless situations that, you know, I was upset about at the time, but as I look back, I'm like, that was God's protection over me.
Okay, so it is a play on words. That's what I love play on words. And like I was telling Sean in our interview, in terms of having done this so long now and always read, I really do study covers and titles. Mm-hmm. So somewhere along the conversation, when I have my guests on, I always get into the cover and the title. And I thought, because when you were giving the first answer, I said, okay, that's not what I thought. And then as you went into the second answer, so it is a play on words in terms of, and actually it's a nice play now that you've described it. So it's covering up from that sense, from that perspective, covering up everything that's wrong with you, and then also being covered by God.
Right.
Nice.
Yes. And I definitely, you know, I know you said something about the cover, and, you know, I did the broken rose because life for us as women, each woman is a rose.
Right.
Each woman is a rose. We come in different shapes, different colors. We have different scents. We have different personalities. So each woman is a rose, but a lot of women are coming up feeling broken before they even get a chance to bloom.
Wow.
And I really want to repair, and I know it's kind of challenging for one woman to do it all, but I want to repair how women feel about life. And don't let our life feel so dependent on a marital status or a relationship or a role, because a lot of us get caught up in that. You know, it's, I'm a wife. Oh, I'm a mom. It's more to you than just that.
That's right.
You know, and you believe it or not, I've experienced it where there's some women, it's, my husband. Well, what about you?
Right.
You know, how are you doing? You know, if your husband fell off the face of the earth today, God forbid, you know, who are you?
Well, I saw something, it was on one of the social media, I think it was Facebook, LinkedIn, one of them. But it said, love your life before you become a wife. Mm-hmm. And that's what the post said. And I said, well, you know, that's right on point. Because, you know, I have 4 daughters, and I'm constantly encouraging, look, love yourself before you worrying about loving somebody else. Because back to this emotional abuse thing, a lot of people, women and men, they don't love themselves. Mm-hmm. And then that brings a whole different issue into a relationship, because you're looking for that other person to be for you who you're not for yourself. So back to your point just now, if God forbid they died or left, now you fall apart because you don't know who you are, and all your stock was placed in that other person. And that could be and it is problematic.
It is, because instead of healing, now you're running on to the next person because now you just got to have somebody.
Right. And in terms of the whole marriage kid thing, it never ends. It's like, okay, when you're going to get married, when you get married, you finally get married. When you're going to have a child, when you're going to have a child, when you're going to have you finally have a child, you have a girl. When you're going to have a boy, when you're going to have a boy, when you're going to have a boy. Okay, then you have I don't know, now you have the boy. Okay, when you're going to have the third child, it never ends.
When you're going to have grandkids.
Right, exactly. It never ends. So it's kind of like you really do have to have your own mind, because if you try to go on people's judgments or questioning of you, you'll drive yourself silly.
Exactly.
So, okay, that explains the cupboard, and it also explains your cover in terms of the rose drooping, because I'm looking at that saying, it really, and again, I tend to get subliminal, and people tell me, you think too deep. I say, no, I don't think I think too deep. But in any event, I'm looking at the rose, and it's almost like a person with their head down. It's almost like a head, like defeated, have given up. That's what that dried up.
Out of water, out of life.
Right.
All of that.
That's exact. And the funny thing is, like I was telling the audience in Shina's interview, there's nothing that's done in terms of book covers and titles that's just by chance. Everything is done to send a message. So the fact that you have the cover there for folks that will interpret that a couple of different ways, that was by design. For the fact that you have a dying rose there, and the posture that the rose is in, because it really does look like a person that's really got their head down and defeated. When I first looked at it, I kind of said, "Oh," that's what it looks like to me. It's like, "Oh, wow, person's really down." Because I mean, you got the rose and you got the leaf that kind of looks like could be their hands or whatever. You got the stem that looks like could be the body, and of course the bud looks like the head. And it really is depicting exactly what. So in the book, you're actually giving some tips and solutions or advice as to how to avoid this or get out of it.
Yes, I told a story about covering 8 years of my life, and in doing that, I taught myself in telling my story how I could have changed things a little bit and made it a little bit different. And I definitely made sure that I concluded in the epilogue that the things that I've learned are just so crucial and fundamental to who I am as a woman now, and the things that I will tolerate and the things that I won't tolerate, the things that I stand for and the things that I won't stand for, things I will play with and the things I won't play with. And I had to have a conversation with women because I do raise awareness to HIV and AIDS, not because I'm a victim of it, but because I want women to know that just because you're a wife, there are a lot of low-down men out there, and that's not to beat up anyone or make them feel bad, but it's a lot of women who think that because they're married, they're safe. And I have met so many women who've been cheated on with multiple women. And I'm just really raising awareness to the fact that, we need to be a little bit more conscientious about who we invite into our lives on any level, and how do we invite them into our lives, and encouraging women to not have unprotected sex, because HIV and sexually transmitted infections are real. They are prevalent. There are a lot of people who have been married for long periods of time. I've met about 5 or 6 women who've been married over 20 years, contracted HIV from their husbands.
Right.
So, and this is a conversation we don't want to have, And so I just really, really, really wanted to bring awareness to women, for one, to stop beating up other women, number one. Number two, stop calling women home wreckers, because there's no such thing as a home wrecker. If you are married, your husband made a commitment to you, not to the other person. So don't go and attack the other woman, because a lot of times these men are lying about if they're married.
Well, see, this is my thinking on that, and I've said this for years. And as a matter of fact, I don't even like the what it suggests. Whenever someone says, "She took my man," or "He took my woman," first off, I tell people I'm not an object that somebody can just take. All right, I'm not like one of the little Barbie dolls or the Ken dolls that somebody can pick up and take them somewhere. So you can rest and be assured, if I were to go out and cheat, I made that choice.
Right.
That's a choice that is made. Nobody took anybody. Nobody can be taken. That's a choice that's being made by the male or the female. So even when I hear that, I stop. Didn't nobody take anybody. I'm like you. That was a choice that was made. And folks need to own up to that, because like you said, that's really kind of, again, putting the accountability on somebody else. Put the accountability where it lies. The man made a choice. Now, whatever reason he made that choice, But at the end of the day, he made a choice. That woman didn't just take him, or she didn't come in and wreck your home. He wrecked your home with his choice.
Right. And the thing is, again, I want women to understand that just because you're married doesn't mean you don't have to take an HIV test.
Right.
You know, you need to
and now
get
they got
tested.
that new one out there, Zika. I think that's what it's called, the Zika virus. See, that one just cropped up now, and I'm watching the news last night, and they're selling the same thing that you're just saying. You know, no unprotected sex. If you're having sex with your wife and she's pregnant, use a condom, because now they're afraid the Zika virus is going to get in.
Right. And I know we don't want to have that conversation, and I know that goes against what was created sex for, especially between a wife and her husband.
Right.
However, you know, again, it's so many issues going on. And these are not just Alexis's problems. These are social problems that we need to combat and stop sweeping under the rug as if they don't exist. Because at the end of the day, women are leaving this earth and are suffering because of so much poor choices. I was in the salon the other night, and I was having a conversation with a young lady, and I let her read my book while I was sitting there, and I was just listening to her response. And we were talking, and we started talking about HIV and AIDS, and I shared with her, I said, do you realize that you can be celibate and you can wait for marriage? And do you realize if your husband made some poor choices in his life, 10 years down the line, that one poor choice can affect you?
Right.
And she said, what do you mean? I said, because HIV and AIDS doesn't just happen overnight. You can take several tests and come up negative. You know, but you can go and get married, and 20 years down the line, you find out that you've contracted the virus from your husband.
That's right.
And she said, really? I said, you didn't know that?
And you know what? You said it earlier in terms of trying to sweep stuff under the rug, or either they're taboo topic, because I've talked on that and written on that before as well. If there's anywhere that topics such as this ought to be exposed, it ought to be the church.
Mm-hmm.
And we, for whatever reason, and thank God the church I'm in is not like that, but I have been in churches that are like that.
Mm-hmm.
We, for some reason, sex is taboo, diseases like that is taboo, and that's the place that it really needs to be exposed. I've actually had authors on the show who have written books, who are in their churches, Christians, whatever their faith is, and in their book they might have a sex scene in there. And you talk about being criticized, they'll get beat down by fellow church members because they had a sex scene in the book. And I'm kind of like, but all right, how did all of us get here? How did you get here? Obvious, and some of the church members have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kids. So it's like, why is that a taboo subject? Because it is a part of life, just like these diseases are. And if you want to combat them, and if you want to head them off, we better start talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a little bit provocateur, so I'm going to talk about it, and I don't care what you think, because I'm not going to close my eyes to what's real. And it's one thing to say that prayer changes things and to have faith that things will change, but we need to really understand how exactly that works.
Right.
You know, so I encourage women who are in abusive relationships, whatever type of abusive relationship that they're in, and if you're married, to really start considering your mental health first and what it is that it's doing to you. Don't sit here and pray that God change your husband, because guess what? At the end of the day, your husband is still a free will person. So your prayers are only going to change you, not your husband, until he wants to change.
Absolutely.
So I don't want women to sit around and beat themselves up because you've invested in an additional 10 years and nothing's happened. That's not God, you know, not working against you. Maybe he told you your answer 10 years ago and you didn't want to hear it.
He still didn't move. That's right. I tell you what, there's a couple of things I need to do, and then we're going to wrap up shortly. But let me share this information with the listening audience, and then we'll come back and I'll let you promote in any way you'd like, with the exception of the price, like I told China earlier.
That's fine.
All right, here we go.
WPSC-FM 88.7, Wayne, New Jersey.
Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network. Brave New Radio.
Straight from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center, here's your local forecast.
All right, right here in the Wayne, New Jersey, gobrave.org area. 24.8 degrees, partly cloudy, high of 43 today, low of 25. Some passing clouds tonight, and then tomorrow, Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, 47 as a high and sunny, 29 as a low, considerable cloudiness Sunday night. Monday, overcast, high of 35, low of 24, mainly cloudy Monday night with snow showers around or before midnight. It looks like a 40% chance of snow or rain, some type of precipitation. Tuesday, flurries and a few snow showers throughout the day. 35 as a high, 25 as a low, cloudy Tuesday night. And then the sun pops back out again on Wednesday. Sunshine and clouds mixed. 20% chance of precipitation. 20 degrees as a low. Expect scattered snow flurries and snow showers Wednesday night. Well, that is the weather brought to you right here from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center. We are finishing up our interview with Alexis Nicole White. I began the interview this morning at 6 o'clock with Shina Key, and Shina and Alexis are on book tour together, and they are both promoting their work. Shina is promoting her book, Wealth is a Mindset, and Alexis is promoting her book, The Covered. So, Alexis, if folks want to get in contact with you to either order your book or to have you come out and speak or catch you in the book tour, this is your opportunity to do all that. The microphone is yours.
Well, you guys can definitely always reach me on alexisnicolewhite.com. You can also email me at bookingalexisnicolewhite@gmail.com. The Covered is available in 40,000 retail stores in 16 countries. It is available, and I strongly encourage you to go purchase it from Barnes & Noble, Books A Millions, Amazon, Hastings, Kobo. It's on Kindle and Nook for my ebook readers. I'm in the process of recording as well an audio book to the book. So I definitely want to make it convenient for you to enjoy the message. You can feel free to follow me on Facebook at Alexis Nicole White, on Instagram and Twitter at I am Miss Alexis, and I am also on Google Plus for all of my people who like to hang out in the Hangouts. And I also am going to get ready to start and launch a YouTube channel under Alexis Nicole White. So you guys can definitely follow me and feel free to contact me. I am very personable, and I will respond accordingly.
All right. Well, I am on all the above. If you're not doing so already, please go, because I think you're already following me now. But if not, you can follow me on all of those, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Pinterest, Google Plus, all of them. You can catch me on there as well. Usually I'm under either my name, Marc Medley, or either the Reading Circle. So, Alexis, I will follow you and you follow me back, and we'll keep up with what's going on. I am so happy to have talked to you and Shina this morning, two sisters who are on the move.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for agreeing to come out early, and not only on the move for yourselves. See, this is the beauty of this thing. You're not on the move just for you. You really are trying to make life better for others. Mm-hmm. And that's truly what it's all about. It's not just about what we can do for ourselves. It really is about how we can make life. So you never know what person, male or female, will be reading your book and their life changes as a result of reading your story. Same thing with Shina. She never knows whose financial picture or wealth picture may change because of some of the tips that they've read in her book. So you all are not just doing what you do just for you. You're doing it with the hope that a legacy will be left. I tell folks, I tell my guests all the time, because I had a guest one time that brought this up when we were talking. One thing that really does not, and I can attest to this, books, once they're in print, they never really die. So once they're out there, they can be out there for 50, 60, 70 years. People store them in trunks. They store them in attics, in basements. They donate them. They go around the world. And you never know, 30, 40, 50 years from now, your book might have been in somebody's attic or trunk, and a kid stumbles across it, and you may be dead and gone. But your book is still here. And some child in, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years from now, 100 years from now, okay, some child in 3016 comes across your book. You've touched a life 100 years later. And that's the beautiful thing about books. We never know whose life is going to touch. So I applaud you and Shina for what you're doing. I wish you nothing but the best as you have upcoming projects. If the show is still on the air, feel free to email me and we'll schedule another date for you.
Well, thank you so much. And again, thank you guys so much. I know about New Jersey and the Patterson area, so I definitely appreciate the opportunity. And I definitely want to hear from everyone out there and to stay in touch with everyone.
All right. Well, I tell you what, have a wonderfully blessed day. And this was recorded. So once I finish editing and doing everything I need to do, I'll email you the links. I actually post them on my YouTube channel. All the archive shows are on my YouTube channel. So it'll be there, and I'll send you the link, and you can do whatever you want with it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Mark. I really do appreciate it.
All right. Best of luck to you and shine on your book tour.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks. You too. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that brings us to the end of an extended version of the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. We did a doubleheader this morning. Had my guest Shina Key and Alexis Nicole White. I love both of their names. Like I said, Alexis is just has, like I said, I'm just quirky in certain things. And one of them is in, if there is such a word as namology, but certainly in naming. I'm just kind of quirky that way. And again, I understand some people, they name after grandparents or whatever, or it might be like the father's grandmother and the mother's grandmother, or the father's mother and the mother, and the names just kind of sound jammed together. Then there are times whenever they just flow. And Alexis's name is one of those that just kind of flow. They don't sound slammed together. They sound melodic. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. It sounds melodic as you say it. You know, it kind of rides the wave. It doesn't bang up against each other. And when I named my kids, believe it or not, that's exactly what was going through my mind. I wanted it to have a meaning, and I wanted it to flow. And in both children, that occurred. So you have Aria Monique Medley, and you have Niara Simone Medley. And it flows the same way this Alexis Nicole White does.